India's defense manufacturing sector appears to have found its momentum. Significant capital is flooding directly into the assembly of precision aerospace components and advanced hardware. The baseline macroeconomic fact driving this is the FY26 defense budget. It has hit a record 6.81 lakh crore rupees. But the total size of that budget is secondary to where the money is legally permitted to go. Look at this curve showing the capital outlay. By FY26, 75% of modernization funds, specifically 1.11 lakh crore rupees, are legally ring-fenced for domestic sources only. This strict ring fence effectively ends the old playbook. You can no longer import foreign kits, swap the branding, and sell them to the military. This creates a unique dilemma for investors. The upside is a stable, long-term procurement pipeline, but the barrier to entry now requires sovereign intellectual property. You have to own the design. The question is whether defense firms and VC investors are actually prepared to survive a landscape that aggressively punishes cheap imports and assembly-only models. To answer that, we need to examine 5 definitive signs that show India has transitioned into a sovereign defense exporter. But for every sign of growth, we will expose the corresponding hidden cost in capital, time, and compliance that companies are forced to pay if they want to participate. Sign number 1 is the mandate for sovereign IP. The industry is pivoting from build-to-print manufacturing to design-to-deliver engineering. Designing systems from scratch requires substantial upfront input. Companies must commit to heavy R&D investment long before a single product is sold. The reward for that risk is design authority status. When you own the IP, you secure 20 to 30% returns on equity. But the harsh trade-off here is time. Companies will burn through patient capital for years to get their tech to procurement readiness. Under this policy shift, you have to endure years of negative cash flow to own the IP that eventually drives those high margins. Sign 2 is export velocity. India's defense exports hit 23,622 crore rupees, reaching over 80 nations. Indigenous platforms drive this surge. Systems like the Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher are in high global demand, with the U.S. emerging as a top buyer. Accessing this $5 billion pipeline requires flawless adherence to global compliance standards, like MTCR and AS9100. These compliance audits can delay international deals by up to 30%, significantly raising overhead costs for manufacturers. Global defense exporting is no longer about superior marketing. It requires surviving rigorous international legal scrutiny to close the sale. Sign 3 is the doctrinal shift away from expensive single platforms and toward attritable, autonomous swarms. You can see the physical manifestation of this in the domestic procurement pipelines, where the military is actively adopting mass autonomy over heavy armor. This creates a 15,000 crore rupee pipeline specifically for UAV swarm tenders and cognitive electronic warfare. Capturing that pipeline requires a complete hiring overhaul. Firms prioritize edge AI and cybersecurity specialists over mechanical engineers. This creates a financial trade-off. Defense firms pay 20 to 30% retention premiums just to prevent top engineers from jumping to big tech. Modern defense manufacturers must operate and recruit exactly like deep tech software companies. Sign 4 is the reality of physical hardware scaling. New defense corridors in Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh were set up to help companies expand. Relocating to these hubs gives manufacturers access to 5G nodes and shared DRDO testing labs. But there is a bottleneck. The country faces a shortage of accredited testing capacity for advanced systems, like hypersonics and electronic warfare. Companies are currently facing an 18-month backlog just to get their physical hardware validated by the military. Founders and investors must price a 1 to 2 year testing delay into their financial runway, or they risk going bankrupt while waiting for certification. Sign 5 is the push to institutionalize deep tech through initiatives like the Military Quantum Mission and stealth aircraft programs. These sovereign projects, like the AMCA stealth fighter, represent the transition into deep tech aviation and advanced materials. Participating in these programs isn't a solo endeavor. It requires forming complex joint ventures and deep, long-term academic partnerships. The trade-off is technology obsolescence risk. You are developing systems today for conflicts a decade from now. Investors are betting capital on technologies that may not see bulk military deployment until 2035. Deep tech defense investment is not for quick flips. It requires a decade of financial patience. The 6.81 lakh crore budget is legally mandated to fund sovereignty. It does not subsidize lazy manufacturing. We can map where companies fall based on their willingness to invest. Copycat assemblers sit in the bottom left. Low capital effort yields low ROI. Up in the top right, IP owners and deep tech see high R&D effort yield dominant market share. The clear winners are patient VC firms, software-defined warfare startups, and mid-tier manufacturers who fund their own proprietary designs. The losers are firms relying on imported Chinese electronics, built-to-print shops, and investors looking for a 12-month exit. 30% profit margins and billion-dollar export pipelines are accessible, but they are guarded by strict compliance and testing requirements. To capitalize on the 2026 defense boom, you cannot just show up with capital. You must be prepared to endure the friction of true self-reliance.